The national tragedy that was Sandy Hook was fake. It was a hoax. Does a claim such as this one sound like something that should be allowed to spread on social media platforms like Twitter? To answer this simply put, no. But today I'm going to explain why. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, have a Twitter account. In fact, according to statusbrew.com, there are 328 million active users on Twitter. Now, I don't know about you, but seeing hateful or violent content on my feed is not something that I want while I'm scrolling through my timeline. And you might be thinking, then block the content you don't like. So let me explain why that is not a sufficient solution. A few of the main points I'd like to discuss with you today are the distinct differences between speech and hate speech. Whether we agree with censorship or not, companies like Twitter simply just have the right to censor the content posted on their platforms. And finally, censorship protects audiences, especially younger ones, from seeing violent content altogether. Now, as many of us know, Alex Jones and his account InfoWars was the first person to be completely removed from Twitter. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, InfoWars is a news source run by Alex Jones that mainly criticizes the government and talks about conspiracy theories. He claims that InfoWars reports on what other media outlets refuse to report. InfoWars has a presence on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and their own website and podcast. Many people online would like to take InfoWars as a means to get their information and political news. However, his content was more entertainment-based rather than factual information. And while, yes, talking about conspiracy theories can be fun and harmless, and criticizing political topics is absolutely all right, the question becomes, does this comment he made fall under our right to have freedom of speech, or was it simply hate speech? I'm sure we are all familiar with what the First Amendment right is, but as a refresher, the First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech, of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. On the other hand, as defined by the Oxford English Dictionary, hate speech is a communication that carries no meaning other than the expression of hatred for some group, especially in circumstances in which the communication is likely to provoke violence. It is an incitement to hatred, primarily against a group of persons defined in terms of race, ethnicity, national origin, gender, religion, sexual orientation, and the like. Platforms like Twitter censor and remove hateful content off of their websites all of the time. So why is Alex Jones the only account that seems to be in the hot seat? Well, because he is a huge social media personality, and maybe many people know who he is. He has a following larger than the population of any country around the world. And despite several warnings from platforms that his content was breaking their policies, he continued to do what he was doing. However, Twitter did not permanently remove him from their platform for a while because they stated although he was being offensive, he was not actually breaking any of Twitter's rules and regulations. Up until they felt he finally crossed the line one too many times, and he was outside of a congressional hearing, Alex Jones was, where Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey was testifying about the way that the company moderates content online. He essentially went after Republican Senator Marco Rubio and interrupted one of his press conferences. He yelled at Dorsey, and at one point he was trying to leave the building, and then he live-streamed an incident where he was verbally attacking a CNN reporter. Now, I've searched high and low to find screenshots of any kind that could potentially provide examples of this content that he was sharing, but I couldn't find any. And I argue if that message that he was spreading was deemed so bad that it became almost impossible to find it on social media or any other internet platform, companies such as Twitter should have the right, and I think it becomes their responsibility to censor said material. Twitter and other platforms and businesses like it also just reserve the right to censor content being posted on their websites. When you sign up for Twitter, you must agree to their terms and conditions before you even make a profile on the site. It explicitly states that they have a zero tolerance policy for content that promotes violence or violent threats on an account will be suspended permanently if they do so. So whether you decide to thoroughly read through those terms and conditions is totally up to you. However, all of the information is there in black and white. And just because they do have rules and regulations does not mean you have no room to express yourself. I'm not proposing we limit people's ideas or try to remove their First Amendment right. I just simply believe should be limitations as to what is appropriate to share. Media censorship also protects young audiences who may be more impressionable from seeing violent things and protects spreading hateful messages. According to Hootsuite.com, 32% of Twitter users are teens and 40% are between ages 18 to 29. This means 72% of the users on this platform are a young and impressionable audience. And statistics also shows that 71% of users get their news from Twitter. So if the vast majority of the audience on Twitter is a younger demographic, this is important to consider, especially in a culture of social media influencers. They get their name because they do exactly what it says. They influence. And as their audiences grow, so does their power and their ability to spread messages. Some content creators have the potential to reach millions of people with a click of a button, and these influencers build communities with their fan bases. And apps like Twitter make it extremely easy to do so. It allows people to feel intimate and close connections with their beloved stars, and fans can begin to idolize these influencers so much that they are ready and willing to believe any message they spread and are willing to come to their defense at any time. We see small examples of this all the time. An influencer will express disinterest in a particular person or place, or talk about a time they were wronged, and immediately their fans will run to Yelp pages or to the other social media platforms and attack them. This could be as little as leaving a bad review or as large as sending death threats. So if these small things can push fans to do such drastic measures, if an influencer was wanting this hateful message to be spread, how far would their fans be willing to go? We can mediate some of this hateful content by potentially creating a group of individuals whose job function it is to monitor these tweets and create and compile a list of keywords most commonly used in hateful messages to be flagged or viewed for this content. While I recognize it is not a perfect solution, action must be taken before the damage is already done. You cannot put a Band-Aid on a broken leg and expect it to be fixed. I hope it is now clear that the media censorship is extremely important, and to reiterate, there is a distinct difference between free and hate speech, and whether we agree with it or not, companies simply reserve the right to do so, especially because younger audiences are on these platforms. Censorship protects these audiences. And if you still aren't sure how you feel about this issue, I'd like to leave you with a quote from Micah Schaefer, who was a former policy leader at YouTube and Snapchat, and is now a technology policy consultant. The challenge faced by any platform that allows everything permitted under U.S. law is that if left unabated, the most objectionable content will inevitably take over. If an online community is dominated by porn, beheadings, or white supremacists, most likely, people are not going to think it is a good place for their baby photos. And today, my speech was directed towards executives at Twitter. Thank you.